When we talk about the commuters, the motorists commute, are we going to save lots of time there from the standpoint of adding the lanes and the HOV lanes? And is the average motorist going to know the difference?
They're going to notice it. We estimate that an individual commuter in the peak period will save 15 to 20 minutes on their commute. 15 to 20 minutes.
You know, Jody, one of the things that I hear from time to time is, Dave, why don't you just eliminate those HOV lanes? And you know, I don't know commuters who, when you're using the HOV lane, you absolutely think it's great. But if you're a single car occupant and you see all the, you know, that lane empty, or you see people going by, you think, well, we ought to get rid of that. But let's talk for a moment about HOV lanes and if science, if I can use that as a word, or certainly from a transportation planning standpoint. Talk about the justification of an HOV lane, if you can.
Really what we're trying to do is move people, not so much cars, but people. And an HOV lane can move 2 to 3 times as many people an hour as a regular lane can. And we see that they work because we have those kind of numbers on Highway 99 in Sacramento County. It does encourage people to create new carpools, and it takes those people who are already carpooling and puts them in the carpool lane, freeing up capacity in the existing lanes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we do get more vehicles through, and we get more people through as well.
Is there thought when you're doing an HOV lane, are you always talking about adding a lane, or sometimes are you talking about taking a lane away?
Usually you're talking about adding a lane. In Sacramento County, we did use an existing lane on Capital City Freeway for a very short distance where we had capacity and it didn't congest things worse. Mm-hmm. We don't normally take a lane because you're just going to make the situation for everyone worse when you do that.
Now, we talked about the District 3, and we talked about the fact that it's Sacramento County, and talked about El Dorado County and Placer County. I also get lots of calls about, Dave, what are you going to do about Highway 80? What are you going to do about the Donner Summit? What are you going to do about the highway that just doesn't, you know, it just doesn't match up is what they talk about. You know, can't you do something? And so I tell them about the projects, but maybe it's a situation where we just need to talk more about the projects that are planned, and how, if you know how much they're going to cost and when are they going to be done, and so that I can, when those constituents call, I can say, you know, this project is going to be done such and such time, that kind of thing.
You're talking about Interstate 80 over the summit?
Interstate 80 over the summit.
You know, that road was built for the 1960 Olympics at Squaw Valley. Mm-hmm. It's 47 years old, and it's just plain worn out. About, maybe 8 or 9 months ago, the director of CalTrans, Will Kempton, had to go to Reno for something. And he was on his way back into California when my phone rang in my office. And Will was on the other end, and he said, Jody, you have the worst pavement in the state of California. And I said, I know, Will. We really need to fix it. Can you help me get money?
It's not about really just having projects. The fact of the matter is you've got lots of projects. But it really is a matter of having the funding, the ability to pay for getting the job done.
That's absolutely right. We have been working on Interstate 80 for the past 10 years. We've rehabilitated about 60% of the pavement, and we have 40% to go. We have a project that's under construction at Donner Summit, and 3 others that are going into construction next year. The last 3 projects the California Transportation Commission approved Garvey bond funding for at their September meeting. And we now have all of those projects fully funded. Those last 3 projects were worth $330 million. The project that's under construction at Donner Summit right now will totally rehabilitate all of the pavement with 12 inches of new Portland concrete cement. We'll replace 2 bridges. We're going to build a crossover so that we can keep traffic moving while we're under construction. And that project will be finished in 2009.
And because of the elevation, because of the snow, you do in fact use concrete as opposed to asphalt or rubberized asphalt?
That's right. The roadway that was built in 1960 was a Portland concrete cement roadway. It lasted 40 years. That's just phenomenal. You can get that kind of lasting wear out of concrete where you can't with asphalt, especially where it freezes and thaws and you have people using chains.
What's the difference, by the way, and if you know, what's the difference in useful life? In other words, you said you can get 40 or 50 years with concrete. What do you get then with asphalt in that kind of situation, do you think?
If you're using it in the high country with chains, about 3 years.
Is that right? About 3 years?
About 3 years.
So
it
you need
falls
to,
apart.
because then in those particular situations, whether it's 50 or 80 going across the summits, you in fact need to replace those roads with concrete Portland cement.
And that's why they're so expensive. We're putting 12 inches in because as the chains wear the pavement and it gets rough and the ride gets rough, you can go in and grind it. You grind a little bit off and then you've got smooth pavement again.
Jody, because you've been working on this project for a goodly number of years, you have watched the inflation, you watched the cost of concrete go up, you watched those kind of things. You got any idea about just how much time delay costs the department, cost your district in terms of just actual dollars? In other words, we know that, for example, if someone is thinking about building a hospital, that 3 or 4 years, you've got another 50 or 60% increase in material costs. You got any idea about the cost of Portland cement today as opposed to 5 years ago?
Concrete, asphalt, steel, they've all gone up astronomically. I would say 25–30% over the past, probably the greatest increases have been in the past 3 years. We've seen a stabilization over the last year where prices have stabilized somewhat and even come down a little bit.
With all of the construction that's going on in the Donner Summit, Highway 80 and Highway 50, the work that's being done there, you've got the construction crews. Let's talk about the safety factor. There's got to be really a hazardous occupation for CalTrans workers or contractors who are working on the road. Are there any special measures taken to protect those workers?
Safety is our #1 priority. And the way that our work zones are coned off, we often use barriers between traffic and the workers. We use attenuation trucks, those sorts of things to try and create that barrier. We have the Slow for the Cone Zone campaign, and that's what the most important thing I would say to folks. If you see that there's a construction zone, a maintenance zone, there's cones out there, slow for the cone zone. 166 CalTrans workers have been killed while working on the roadways since 1929 when we started keeping track. And in fact, we just had a young man, 24 years old, killed in our Los Angeles district.